Hi, good night.
Good night.
How are you? How is everything going? I will please ask you as always that please turn on your cameras, except Andrea that told me that for tonight is not possible. So Anaí, good night. Thanks for being here. Give me a second. Now, it's really cold here. Okay, so tonight we will start to discuss about the environmental law. This is a really important topic because basically our human being exists because we are sharing a land, we are sharing a space, you are sharing a country, but most of all, we are sharing some resources or natural resources. Basically, we have a lot of political matters involving how we can extract, how we can, make money and make like a successful economy based on natural materials or based on extractions of minerals, or also about how some other countries led that destination to the nature, to tourism and other ways to basically win money based in our nature. We have different standards, as you know, like for example, if we are talking about protection of lands in the Amazon, we will involve like some indigenous communities from Brazil that they are the most recognized as protecting ones. But I want that you keep in your minds that when we are talking about these global matters, we have some other powers that maybe are secret powers, that they take the decision to succeed in their companies. And basically what they propose is like a compensation. They say, okay, we pollute so much, so we will pay 5 trees each, whatever 100 of production in one country in Latin America. That is a compensation law that we apply it all here in Colombia. We apply it with our little companies and with the most polluting ones. But also, here is something so important that I want to call your attention in the way that we need to be so organized in the information that we consume, but also in the products, because our impact is daily. Like, just doing a simple analysis, imagine that when you were a child, you use toothbrush, and that toothbrush is in some part of one, I don't know, trash center, or I don't know, maybe in the ocean. Like every single thing that we use daily exists and will continue existing like for our 10 generations that are coming. So this, of course, is from the point of view of law, but also to recognize what kind of products maybe we can simplify, or we can, like try to support other kind of economy. And also to be so analytic about every kind or every little thing that you consume. If I do a really fast Google check, I will figure out that the Coca-Cola company, for example, when they have like issues, because in Colombia, my country, they, apart from the polluting process, that is one of the most successful companies all around the world, but also they have like the top 10 in the world polluting, contaminar. They have, for example, in my country, some issues about some workers that were fighting for other rights inside of the company, and they were like suspiciously murdered. So we need to figure out what kind of products we are consuming every time. This is something that is going about investigations and research and figure out who are the responsibles about this crime. but we need to understand what are the interests that exist behind any product that we use, that we consume, okay? We will talk about some environmental law. I need please that you let me know if you can check my screen right now. Environmental law means etc. And then way of think, but also
No, it's on the first presentation.
mm,
That is a legal English workshop.
I don't know why we are having this issue every single day. Now let me know here what you can see. You see movement, way of think, but also how to help. Are you
Yes,
seeing that? And next,
yes.
environmental law, value and blah, blah, blah. Okay, perfect. So first of all, we need to analyze that environmental law is a really newborn area of law that, of course, take influence because a lot of our economy or political systems depends from the quality life that we can get in different countries. Of course, why Europeans people's love comes to Latin America, because you can see a lot of nature and a lot of life and a lot of forest and etc. Maybe that exists in other ways in Europe, but not as much as we have it. For example, we have the 75% of the water, like in a couple of countries, right? All that resources needs to be protected. That's why the environmental law borns. So we have here a little concept. Environmental law means any and all federal, in case of America or etc., or state, national, local and foreign statutes, law, regulations, ordinances, rules, judgments, orders, decrees, permits, concessions, grants. Esto es muy importante, franquicias, franchise, licenses, agreements of governmental restrictions relating to pollution, and the protection of the environmental or the release of any materials into the environment, including those related to ¿cómo se pronuncia esto? Those, I cannot remember. I don't know. Hazard, let me check. We will see how the hell pronounce that word. Here. Can you listen?
Hazardous.
Hazardous. Again?
Hazardous.
Hazardous. It's really hard. For me, it's hard. Hazardous, because it's something that we never like listen frequently. This means peligroso. See? So we are referring to all the substances that has danger. Basically, danger is something that we listen always, but hazardous is something that is explained here in this huge concept. Air emissions and discharges to waste or public systems. Waste means residuos, significa también basura, significa también desperdicios, también puede significar, bueno, básicamente todo lo que termina en la basura is waste. But also we use it in a concept like you are a waste of time. Es como también una pérdida, ¿sí? ¿Han escuchado esa expresión como pérdida de tiempo? I'm wasting my time. En ese sentido se puede utilizar, pero en este está refiriendo a residuos sólidos y a desperdicios, básicamente. Exists a lot of way of thinking about how to help to change the decision that affect us, right? How we can find and how we can solve some issues. And basically the people that are more interested in, you know, be more conscious about our behavior in this moment in our lives, taking into account that everything that we do will affect the future, this we call it like environmentalists, okay? Are people that are fighting for a consumption that be a little bit more responsible. When we talk about environmental law, we need to have 4 aspects in our minds. First, valuing the environmental but protecting. Second, law of environmental problems, that is more related with political stuff or public matters, like some public policies that will affect or prevent some damages. Or other problems that can be global. We have like, in my case, in Bogota, we have some restrictions for the people that has like 2 or 3 cars. So they have like a specific date for use it or for not use it. When a public policy blocks that kind of stuff, it's just, of course, protecting all the transport and etc. But it's also protecting how polluting can be have 3 cars in a family, right? Happens a lot of in Canada, like each member of the family has their own car. And this is crazy because if we manage a really good transport system, like public transport system, will be not necessary that the 20% of the people do the pollution of the whole city because they have like other, economic level. So this is so important to take into account. But other problems can be the global problems that we have, like climate change. Maybe, yes, if I take a decision, I will help the future of my next generations, but it's not the same level how I can contaminate my whole life, how a big industry can contaminate in one day, right? And this needs to be protected for some lawyers. And depends of your point of view if you want to work from one of these companies that it's also allowed because we not all things in the same way. This is a really important source of work. Why? Because every company needs to be protected, needs to be according with the regional law that they need to apply or where they need to exist. They need to have fulfilled requirements about all the environmental rules that exist in that area, okay? The environmental problems are complex because the humans are social and physically complex. All people have problems, and this is so important to understand. If exist like hundreds and hundreds of years about psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, or when we talk about philosophy, it's really hard to understand how our brain works. But also as a society, we are really complex because for all our dynamics. And this is the base about how solve one of these issues is really hard because culture plays a really important role in these cases. I don't know if you have any idea about that in Denmark, and you can Google it after we finish our lesson. They have something that is like a festival or carnival where they take like a lot of knives, cuchillos, and basically they go into the ocean and they kill like, I don't know, hundreds of whales. Did you know that? And basically is that, I don't know, it's like really static and crazy stuff that the whole area of the water turns red because of the blood. I know your faces. Why you don't believe me? I will Google it with you right now. I will see how the hell to share my Google screen. I know that it's so crazy, but they like do it with whales and also with dolphins. So I will share my screen right now. This is really, really strong, you know, but it's a carnival and the people do it. This is like cultural stuff, and they just kill them. Why? Because it's fun, and you can see that like I know that this is like by heart. I know I check it in your faces, but this is the reality. And basically, in other part of the world, things completely different than us. And there, some kids. You can see in this one. Can you see my mouse? they use like any kind of things for kill them and just for enjoy it. This is like so check, can you see the little baby? This is so persecute in international matters because a lot of organizations from environmental or people that defends the environment and the rights of the animals, they are trying to avoid this kind of behavior, but they continue like same that indigenous communities, you know, they have like an ancestral base, and it's really hard to put that down, you know. If you have time, maybe if you are interested in that, in this kind of topics, I want that you check this kind of content, because this is show us how broke is our society from a point of view. Maybe other people can have other points of other point of view. Now I will show you like other example. Did you listen about fracking? You know what means fracking? Okay, fracking is a technique that is basically used in Australia. Australia comes to use it, and what they do is like they start to break the or lands, but going to down, okay? And from the bases, they start to take gas. And it's other way, not as petroleum, but they try to, you know, like we have stones or rocks in our lands, right? And when I start to break them, all the gas for the compression start to going out like with a lot of force, and they take it, they compress it, and then they'll sell it because it's a way to have gas. The problem with this is for break and basically for have the power to make a space like 100 meters going down, they need to use like a lot of chemicals that, you know, that in some countries we have water down. So when we use these kind of substances, what happens? That get contaminated the land. And as we are using heavy metals, really heavy metals, I saw one time a video in Australia about fracking. And what happens? That then when the water comes, they started to put fire on it, and because of the heavy metals, just the water get burned. And imagine if you consume that kind of water, imagine the consequences that you will have in your body. So it's really hard to identify the beginning of any kind of behavior in your body like really fast, because you will develop cancer or other issues that takes times into development. So make the connection between the water that you are consuming and the consequences in the hospital will take like 10 years. And you, oh, sorry, yes, this girl has cancer. But for they are really hard to understand that is because our own behavior or the behavior of some companies. In Colombia, at some point, as I told you, that we have been like a lot of like social matters. When I was a child, this was the all day news that we have in our daily stuff, because as a way to call the attention from the government, what the people against of basically the society broke these connections from the extraction of petroleum, and happens like almost monthly, and they contaminate like rivers and all this water that basically has oil will arrive to the ocean and will like kill a lot. Check, can you check the footprint like of the contamination? They kill everything that is around. And I know that this is so hard, but happens in my country. like millions and millions and millions of all the species, are the consequences. And what is the base of this? The human behavior. So when I am explaining to you that it's really hard to manage a society, is because of the examples that I just show you. We are really, really complex. Okay, we are here, okay? Now you can see the next nations. You can see it. Okay, nations. So what is the problem? Basically, that every nation has like a different legal system. And as you saw in some nations, some things are legal. And here, from our perspective, this is really crazy. It's like not coming to our minds how this can happen in our century. We have different legal obligations. We have different contexts because they produce different, and we have issues. Here it is. I texted back. Y se me fue una I, es una I. Issues, okay? Because we are governed for different people that think completely different. After all these kind of cases that call the attentions in a global matter, we have a concept that is called environmental justice. This environmental justice is a different kind of justice that comes from a specific tribunal or court and basically try to give some rights to the things, basically, because we believe as we born and we grow up believing that we are the center of the universe. Basically, everything is around us and nature has no rights. So this environmental justice is a movement that are trying to give rights to the rivers, to the lands, to the ocean, and try to give them a way to protect it. But apply it in Latin America is the hardest things ever seen. When we talk about this topic about contamination of huge companies in Canada, for example, they will have a punishment really, really strong. And for that reason, they will make that all the political matters get accommodated or get different because of this situation. But as I told you, from different points of view and from different concepts, and of course, because we have different Congress, different presidents, different interests, about how solve a problem, it's really hard because the interests are involved in it, but also everything is interrelated. If I want to produce soda, or I want to produce any product for or beauty, etc., I will use water. Water is the base of your body, but also the base of almost any product that we consume. And this is really hard to manage because you can pay for a public service, but you are contaminated and really, really hard. So legitimate role of the government is a point of view. They can have the position to respect, to approve, or to not approve any kind of behavior. But something happens if the next president thinks completely different, because this is interrelated, but is like dynamic. It's changing all the time. It's not the same perception from our president that the next one, and happens in all the countries. So in this environmental justice starts to born some principles that becomes to tort law. Remember that in our first sessions, we will discuss that tort law means like the responsibility, like the responsabilidad civil, contractual, extracontractual. The examples that I show you, like the case of the terrorism that in my country happened like 10 years ago, it's something that is extracontractual, don't belong to a contract, it doesn't make a contract for put fire in an oil gas. They just do it, but they have consequences. So these principles of this responsibility get inspired this kind of environmental justice. We have environmental justice working on it, but civil, criminal, they are trying to deal these environmental issues. But imagine that you don't have any kind of proofs about the contamination. You cannot make justice from the criminal law, right? So it's really hard because you need like the whole system overseeing the situation. I will put it easier. Imagine that you are in the nation and you need to oversee the behavior on a forest. And someone just turn on a cigarette and make a really huge brush fire. As you saw maybe last year, maybe year and a half, Like a lot of lands in Brazil were born on because they want that lands for make businesses, you know, with costs, and basically because of the consume of meat, we need to have a lot of um, space to make that they grow and continue with the killer system. I was a vegetarian for 8 months. Was really easy for me because at that point I was sharing with a couple of Argentinian girls that they never eat, even smell the meat was not possible, but they cook amazing and my body doesn't need it. But in my house, for example, it's really hard because every day, like I stop it because I was traveling, and if I am traveling, it's really hard to find a good restaurant that are always like making this kind of food. So first of all, it's more expensive, but second, it's really hard to find it. In Bolivia, it's like almost a miracle. And for me, it's like I need to adapt myself. But imagine in my country, in my house, it's really hard because every day we eat what kind of meat, like or fish or whatever. And one time that is done, it's really hard to say no because then you have it, and I feel guilty. I really admire the people that can do it, but it's a whole process, and I'm not putting like a lot of discipline. But I am conscious that this is one of the bases of the problem, you know. But taking into account the point of view that I was explaining before. Imagine like what happened in Bolivia if someone do the thing about the cigarette. It's really hard to prove who was the person that turned on the cigarette and let it into the forest. That is really hard. It's really hard to prove it, even when the consequences are terrible. I saw the brush fires in Bolivia. That is really hard. It's one time that is done, even with volunteers and with the helicopters and with all the structure for trying to turn it down, it's really hard. We have a lot of NGOs working on, you know, like cooperation. We work with international cooperation and try to see maybe how we can respect the parts of these natural resources, but it's really, really hard. Taken into a speech given in Yale University in the framework of a course talking about the principles and strategies in environmental law. In 2010, they were discussing about which kind of process were the most common and heaviest and the most problematic ones. What is like the issues that involves the whole humanity, okay? So we have air pollution, water quality, food safety, loss of biodiversity, climate change, access to minerals, new developments, and chemical products in the environment. I don't know if you check some studies that say that everything that we eat, maybe a fish, whatever, has like microplastics on it. Did you listen about it? Because of the whole contamination, and that is the same consequences. Every fucking product that you use in your daily life comes in plastic bags or in plastic rest. It's like it's really hard to avoid the plastic from your life unless you get like so conscious and maybe you have a specific market, but everything has plastic on it, even the food that we are eating. And these are studies, I'm not saying that. The universities, the best or the top universities in the world are analyzing that kind of thing. So we need to use these key questions to analyze how maybe some behavior of the government can help or can handle it or can have completely opposite position from the interest. So first of all, we have the level of government appropriate to problem. How the problem be managed for the government. Branch of government to establish law. Exists a group of people that be on the Congress try to involve try to have these kind of matters. We have access to data. We have confidentiality in the trades or in the agreements that the huge company have. We can have really access to that information or be protected for private law. We have this that is so important. Prescription. This is called, en español es el derecho preferente de compra, right? And this means that if you produce, I don't know, if you produce tomatoes, you need to first of all try to sell it in your country and then try to export it. But as we were talking about the bilateral agreements the last session, sometimes it's cheaper for the consumer or for the customer buy, for example, I will tell you my daily based example. For me, it's cheaper buy apples from Chile than buy apples from Colombia. Here, when you go to buy apples in a market, you will find like peaches from Chile, bananas from Brazil, because for our multilateral agreements, the importation, the import and export is like you have no taxes. But if you produce in the government, you need to pay taxes. So that increase how much you will pay for a banana. But if you are talking about the customer point of view, what kind of banana you will buy? The cheaper. And I am not the one that I'm thinking, like the system, thing like that. If I'm telling you, I will sell this cup to you in 20 bucks or in 50 bucks, how much you want to pay? Maybe the quality is quite different. You will try to pay the cheaper one, right? It's a rule of law. But when we are talking about this preemption, we need to talk and we need to check it that is from the point of view of the government. And that happened with all the resources. But I will tell you again my example. In Colombia, what they do is like any kind of successful company that belongs to the government, they sell it to the private corporations because they can have other point of view about manage the process, about the managing the money, and they don't need to fulfill a lot of requirements as if a company belongs to the government. This is something that we need to put in debate, but happens in my country. And we have other thing that is administrative discretions. You know that in Colombia or in any country, we need to use pesticides in food, you know, because if not, the animals eat it before than us. But imagine that, I don't know if you check some programs about transgenics and how maybe these orange are so big and perfect and nice, and then you eat it, it has no flavor at all, because they start to modify what we are consuming. You know, like genetic, they are changing it. And that is an administrative discretion. I cannot modify the rules. I cannot modify how we can start to deal in a market because we are not having that power. But maybe we have the power of consume. It's really hard sometimes to buy some national products over other ones, or to avoid these huge and perfect fruits, avoid the others that don't look so good. But we need to analyze. I don't know if you listen the history about how they are modifying, how the American are modifying the chickens to have more wings. Did you listen that? Yes, Sarela, did you check it? Exists like studies that, you know, that when you go to eat some chicken, you ask for wings, you know, for las alas. So basically what they are doing is creating a business about make that one chicken has 8 or 10 wings, you know, for make it like more affordable and for make that the business can work. Because And this is happening. This is reality. I doesn't believe it, but then I start to check it online and it's like, it's really crazy and heavy what is happening around this topic. And basically, this is all involved in environmental law. We have some precedents and some interpretations, okay? Consequences and risk of every decision, right? This is the example. We have like here a couple of companies that import a lot of products. For example, sometimes I eat olives from Spain because in Colombia we doesn't produce it at all, or has like a really good quality producing and they just export it. Happens the same with avocados. If you go to a country, if you go to a town in Colombia where they produce, all of them produce avocados, you cannot buy an avocado because for the producers is not business at all to sell you an avocado in $1 when they sell it to Belgium in $8 or to Australia in 10. For the producers in Colombia, it's not business to make that the product keep in the country. They try to sell it in euros or in pounds, que son libras esterlinas, pounds, or in dollars. And this is so crazy. Now, of course, that as we are becoming, as you are becoming lawyers and we study this the whole life, we have something that is called the dynamic burden of proof. Significa la carga dinámica de la prueba. And we use it in our whole career. What means the dynamic burden of proof for Valeria and for making like a fast resume for Anais, Arela, and Andrea? This means that someone in a process, in any kind of process of law, the ones that has the power to make the proof or to present the proof in a really easy way should to present it. La persona que tiene, por la razón que sea, una facilidad para presentar la prueba, hacer la prueba, crear la prueba, lo que sea relacionado con la prueba, se encuentra en la obligación de presentarla. La carga dinámica de la prueba. I will tell you an example. Imagine that I am a customer from the health system and a physician made a mistake in my body in a surgery. For me, it's really hard. Maybe if I start to see some reaction, I can check where was the mistake. But from the point of view of a physician, I cannot sustain what was wrongdoing in my body. So I need to ask to other physician that comes and explain what was wrong in the proceeding, okay? But the judge can tell to my doctor or to my physician that explains what happened in my proceeding and to prove that he or her make wrongdoing or that they do it in the legal way. We will check this in our next sessions when we start to talk about medical negligence. And this is the basis of medical negligence. Okay?
¿Esto tiene que ver con los peritos?
Yeah. Basically, when you need to prove something, like in a case, depends of the circumstances that you need to prove, for make that your concept or your argument make it stronger, you use an expert. You use the concept of an expert, okay? And in this case, I can use an expert. I can use a physician that tell what was wrong in my body, but also I can tell to the judge, hey, based on the dynamic burden of the proof, I need to ask you that please request to the doctor that make the surgery on me and makes that explain what happened in the proceeding, because for them are easier, okay? Esto está fundamentado en para quién es más fácil probar, y para la persona que le quede más fácil probarlo, está la llamada, o sea, la responsable de probarlo, ¿ok? Esto es la mitad del derecho. Básicamente, en todas las áreas, in all the areas, we need to deal with this topic. When we are talking about evidence, in these kind of issues in environmental law. The damage is something that is not a thing that you need to prove, or the consequences. If I tell to the judge, hey, this company contaminates the whole river with my whole family drink water, I doesn't need to explain to the judge why I cannot drink this water. I just need to give them a result of a chemical test or etc. But also I can call to the company, to the judge, and I can make that they make the study of the contamination water because of dynamic burden of the proof. So the industry wants that government prove damages, and this is the base of all the problems, because imagine that the government has a limited resources, talking about the economy, and the experts and the people that we can contract for sustain one contamination for a huge company won't be the same experts that this company billionaire will pay for sustain that the water wasn't contaminated for them. So imagine that all the scientific analysis, fight with lawyers, with the best lawyers, and how happens in all the countries that the best law firms represent the bigger companies. So it's basically a cycle where if you are representing the state, it's really hard that you can fight against the whole system and against the interest and the economical interest, because they have a legal expertise for defend them. And this is a base for work for someone that wants to get involved in this corporative sector, right? So imagine that studies for $100 billion, I repeat the studies, sorry. Ignore the first studies. $100 billion in studies for chemicals for keep them in the marketplace. If you check any product, I don't know, your shampoo or whatever, and you check how many chemicals are on it, maybe you cannot understand because they have their scientific names, but you know that is something that will damage at some point your hair, right? And they pay, like the companies pay hundreds of millions of dollars to have the best lawyers, the best law firms to sustain that the product that they are producing that is so successful, that is giving a lot of profit, is good usage on the body, right? In Bolivia, I doesn't check it. In Peru and Ecuador have it. Like any product that you eat, that you can buy in a market or whatever, that is like involved in plastic bags or etc., have a sticker that informs you the level of like damage that can have your body. Not about calories, no, about the sugar, about like it's so clear and make it easier for the people. Sodium and some substances that have been demonstrated that are completely bad for our body. Okay, but in Colombia, for a lot of groups are trying to make that become a law, but the government doesn't accept it because that when you have the information, keep this in your minds. Information is power. When you have the information, when you know about something, you have other position. Another position gives you power. If you can have the whole information about what you are consuming, like the real information, you will have other point of view about the bullshit that we are eating every day. But if we doesn't have access, we know that a hamburger is really bad for our system, but when we eat a hamburger, we doesn't have like the whole rules. This is directed to your body, to your heart, to your blah, 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 blah. But if that happens, if you have all that information in all the products that you consume every day, maybe your consume can be different. And this is something that some private companies are not in the way to accept. So all these cases are the perfect example about environmental issues. From the beginning until now, we have something that is called the preponderance of the evidence. During the majority of civil trials, a plaintiff has the burden of proof the case by a preponderance of the evidence. This means that the jury will need to be convinced based on all the evidence that there is a greater than 50% chance that the defendant caused the harm alleged in the lawsuit. This is something that doesn't happen in our countries. In our countries, we doesn't have a jury. Nosotros no tenemos jurado. So imagine that in a criminal thing, we doesn't come to in front of a jury and then they take the decision. In some countries and in some states in America, for example, as we can check it in movies, happens. And the decision is taken by a judge, but it also taking the opinion from the civil people that are into the trial to make what happens, okay? So as you can check here is like the translation, because some of the parts are like, I want to be clear. But basically, preponderance means which proof has more power than other. Maybe a declaration, maybe a documental proof, maybe a video. And what kind of proof can take you closer to the truth, okay? And this is based on the principle of preponderance of the evidence. Remember that all of these matters are based in sovereignty of the countries. When we are talking about any kind of product that we consume, we know, for example, that in India, the people, you know, do you listen about the problems that we are having with fast fashion? Yes, do you listen about it, fast fashion? And I maybe not? Okay, fast fashion is everything that is happening right now because the huge markets and selling clothes like really cheap because producing is really cheap. So make it to you so affordable as you can buy a jacket with $8 or something. Because a child in India producing the whole day for a worker, they pay $1 or $2 for 10 hours work. So as they producing in Thailand so cheap, they just send them to other countries and make it so cheap and try to use all the market and all the publicity to put your body and your brain in a situation that you need to buy and you need to buy it and buy it and buy it and buy it because of fashion, because you need to get modern, because you need to be succeed or whatever. So the companies doesn't pay that money into their workers. These companies pay that money into the marketing stuff for making that you consume, that you can consume as much as you can. This is the example with fast fashion, but happens with everything, with electronics. Every time it's cheaper. In Bolivia, no, because you need to pay it, or for Peru or for Brazil or for Chile, whatever, you need to pay taxes because you need to pay transportation or etc. But for example, in Colombia, that is so cheap. You can check, you can buy really good phones, so cheap. And you know that inside of all the phones, we have something that is lithium. And this is lithium. This is one of the most dangerous substances on the planet. And imagine that I can buy a phone because I am winning well and I want to buy and have the best iPhone that I can have. And I want to buy a phone because it's affordable for me every year or every 6 months. And I am stopping to use the other one. That is contamination also. So Asia has like a different standards about the industrial matters, about the electronics, about every continent has a different issues. But for me, it was like really crazy and break my head to think that someone works 12 hours per day or more and win $1. for the whole day, or $2, right? This is an slave, but it's an slave of the system. And this is something that is not directly related with this topic, but is so related. Other topic that it's including in the most problematic issues are the radioactive materials, and how this radiation and contamination with all these oils and the example that I just gave you make that our life expectations get every time lower. Okay. Remember that exists a false sense of security around the world because always exists private interest and public policies that support that private interest. Why? Because the huge companies support the political groups that involves or proposed a candidate for a government or for become a president of a country. And that means that we are always involved in the same cycle. We cannot move on because the money are still moving the whole system. Okay. So tomorrow we will have the exercise about the speech that I proposed with the video that I sent to you last night. I hope that you had time to check it. If not, getting prepared for tomorrow. It's really heartbreaking to check how these little kids come in front of the judge without any idea about how to pronounce a word in English. But I want that you try to produce it from the emotional way, but also from the history, and that you can create the best argument that you can. So I will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time. Before you leave, as always, please fulfill the survey that now is online. Check it. And I hope that you can read more about these topics, because all this information, I have it in my mind because I'm just getting interested on it. But a lot of the people doesn't know that this kind of things happens. Especially the thing with the dolphins is like something so cruel, but the people doesn't know it. And we have all that information just a click distance. So Google it and you will find like how crazy the people are. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you tomorrow. Rest. And bye-bye. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye.